Evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and welcome to the school committee meeting for the purpose of interviewing our superintendent candidate, Kevin McCaskill. Kevin, welcome. We're very much looking forward to our discussion tonight. This is an in-person meeting for the school committee. We do have remote access as well. For anyone who is interested in joining remotely, just want to let everyone know that you do need to be putting your full name in before you can be admitted to the Zoom, but we welcome you to be listening remotely to tonight's meeting. So at this point, I will turn it over to Ford Spalding to get us started.
Thank you, Pam. I'm Ford Spalding. I'm a member of the Minuteman School Committee from Dover. And we are delighted again to have you, Kevin, with us. Kevin McCaskill has been here for a good part of the day. He's had a lunch with students, a couple of students. He's had a tour of the inside of the building, and he's met some staff members as well as students. He has had a tour of the outside campus of the building. He has answered questions for an hour. He first had questions for about an hour, again with staff here on the campus. Then he had questions on Zoom with parents, district officials, and program advisory members and alumni. And now he's going to be with us for a couple of hours. What the school committee is going to be doing, Kevin, is asking questions, prepared questions, which we're asking all candidates for approximately an hour and a half. And then we will take a brief break, and then we will have open questions from the school committee. This meeting is being recorded. It's going to be available for people to see it afterwards. I want to welcome Kevin. We will be asking questions in order. So let me introduce you, and then you can have your opening statement, if I can. Currently, Kevin serves in the position as Assistant Superintendent in the Boston Public School Administration. Previously, he was the Executive Director at Madison Park Technical Vocational High School. He did that for over 6 years. Before that, he was the Director of Secondary Schools and Operations in Hartford, Connecticut Public Schools for a little over 5 years. Prior to that, he was the principal of Putnam Vocational School in Springfield, Mass. For 6 years. And he served in other administrative and teaching duties in Springfield for 15 years. So he's been involved in education for a long time. Yeah, he received his master's in education from Westfield State in 1994. So Kevin, we welcome you. I'm going to ask each member of the school committee to introduce themselves to you, and then you can introduce yourself to us.
Hi, Kevin. Jeff Stuhlin, representative from Needham. Good to meet you again.
Hi, Kevin. Alice DeLuca from Stowe. Thank you.
Welcome. Judy Crocker from Lexington.
Hi, Pam Nurse from Acton.
Ford Spalding from Dover.
Steve Ledoux from Concord.
Dave O'Connor from Bolton.
Michael Ruderman of Arlington.
And I would like to say that Jennifer Leone is online listening to you, and she will be submitting questions when the time comes. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Minuteman School Committee for allowing me this opportunity, as well as the school community here at Minuteman for this opportunity to be a finalist for the Superintendency of the Minuteman School District. It has, as Ford alluded to, it has been a day of really acclimating myself, of speaking with students and seeing staff, seeing the building and how it flows, and seeing the outside, but also talking about the vision going forward with Minuteman, and a very worthwhile day. And it really reaffirmed of why vocational education is where I need to get back to 100% of the time, as opposed to a portion of the time. And this is just an outstanding, outstanding school. And even before the new building was built, the success was already here. And I really want to be a part of it. And just seeing the student body was just outstanding today. Seeing the culture of collaboration, seeing staff members working with students. And it's during the worst of times, being of COVID, that you have this commitment to education. And it's conducive. It is something that I can only describe for me of that burning sensation of excitement of being a part of the Minuteman community. So I look forward to the questions tonight and providing you with an insight of who I am as an educator and what I can bring to the table for the Minuteman School District. And I look forward to tonight. Thank you.
Pam?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start that over because I forgot the microphone, and without that, the people online would not be able to hear my question. So starting over again, after spending 7 hours on the campus today and touring the campus, meeting with students and staff, talking with parents in the community, can you tell us what long-term opportunities jump out to you for Minuteman? And as a superintendent, what direction you would want to go in?
Absolutely. Well, seeing the commitment that is made on the hours that I was here to students. And the long term is the students developing into industry professionals through the 19 programs. It's obvious that students are here for that specific reason, Students are able to articulate why they're here and what excites them about being at Minuteman and what the future holds for them. And if that's just a small sample group, that's just a small sample group of the student body. And it's exciting to hear that students have a plan of attack. Some are going into post-secondary institutions of higher ed. Some are willing to go into the world of work. And I think the one piece that was missing is really to talk to the program advisory board members to really close that loop to say, these are the students that we are preparing for you to take into industry, to drive industry. And another facet of it, I think that's important, is that we're creating the next workforce in this area, that students find gainful employment and stay in their home areas so they can really dedicate themselves to producing, but most importantly, participating in the economies of scale within their own communities. So we begin to grow communities where you don't see students leaving these communities for other small communities. They are keeping their dollars and cents here in the Minuteman, I should say, catchment area. So that's exciting to me to really see that in this short period of time. Going through and finding the opportunities to expand with a couple of the properties, and you look at what are the possibilities of expansion? What does that look like? And I look forward to really working with a strategic working group to really find out what are the best opportunities that we should present to the school committee to move forward. Opportunities that will provide our students, obviously, an outstanding education, but opportunities to showcase their talents, which will, one, help our recruiting of future and prospective students. Two, increase their participation in actually being a part of the expansion process. And three, just taking this knowledge off into further educational and industry opportunities. So I think just seeing that in a short glimpse of time over a matter of 7 hours was just tremendous. And I am hopeful, very hopeful, to be a part of that expansion.
Thank you, Kevin. Michael?
Thank you, Ford. Mr. McCaskill, a superintendent needs a comprehensive understanding of financial issues, far beyond that of developing a budget. Would you describe at least 3 incidents other than budgeting and grants that clearly demonstrate your understanding of district financial issues?
One is I think with programming. I mean, so many times when we look at specific programming, and if I could use in the past, supplemental program to support student learning, because these are things sometimes that we do not budget for. So when we look at our budgets, and that could be for after-school tutorial programs, which costs money, believe it or not, because we do have to pay teachers for that. Saturday school, I'll use a Saturday school example as well. Saturday school was a model that we used in Boston as well as in Springfield to offer more academic support for students who needed those supports. But secondly, to open up some of our vocational areas for additional program and enrichment programs and skill acquisition. And so really amortizing the cost of what it would cost to run a particular program, X number of weeks, X number of hours, obviously with X number of staff, and putting that together and seeing if are there funding mechanisms to make that work. And if it does not fit within the general budget paradigm, are there grant opportunities? Again, I know outside, what are other opportunities to draw from them? Can we draw from our business partners? And one of the reasons why I say that, Eversource was a great partner for us at Madison Park of providing funds to fund a particular student support service. So really looking outside the realm of just a general budget piece, but looking at our partners to see if there is something that they can do. But also budgets influence staffing patterns. And as we are looking at to expand the school, what does that look like with respect to vocational programming? I see in some programs, there may only be one instructor. If the demand for certain programs demand 2 instructors, where are we going to get that money? So looking at alternative means, and again, could be through grant funding, but again, utilizing our industry partners, utilizing some in-kind opportunities from our local institutions, such as our local colleges and universities, but also in industry, in which some individual companies and firms may do in kind. So really looking at some innovative and new pieces of attracting those things that we really need to support student learning, to improve student performance and student outcomes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Steve. Dave.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, what would be your ideas on increasing and managing the enrollment at Minuteman, and which direct experiences do you have that might be helpful for that?
I'll answer the latter first, if you don't mind, Mr. Ledoux. I think really continue to marketing that's the school for what it is. It's a school. It's the only school, when you compare it to the more comprehensive and traditional schools in some of our municipalities, that actually trains students for careers. And it's not a knock on these other schools. That's what these schools are functioned to do. And really getting out, and not just getting out to our 8th graders in these, but really going down to the students hit middle school. So we start to plant those seeds, and it's very intentional. We look at programming, summer programming for students to come in during those middle school years, to expose them to programs here at Minuteman. Through the media, through our website, obviously through the paper media, through brochures and other and the such, of getting hand materials to individuals to showcase the work that is being done here. And so also looking at the immediate catchment area. One of the things I did look at, we have our 9 representative sending districts, but the number of out-of-district students that are here, especially those in Watertown, which I believe has a high number of students. And so looking at those opportunities to continue to recruit aggressively. So one, enrollment is never a problem. But one of the questions in a similar question was asked earlier in the 5 o'clock session, really looking at population demographic trends across our sending and non-sending districts, and looking at those patterns. And so again, to really be intentional of where we recruit, which is going to be very aggressive, but also really understanding the numbers, understanding those numbers. If we start seeing numbers trending down, we really have to start looking at other means of maybe other communities. So but really looking at those trends, I think is going to be of vital importance to not just to maintain, but to really aggressively approach enrollment figures where we meet the needs not only of our students, but again, financially, it is conducive for us to continue providing outstanding education.
Thank you,
And what
Kevin.
was the first part of that question? I did answer the latter. Oh, Dave, oh, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Mr. O'Connor, my mistake.
That's all right.
Mhm.
Um, you actually answered it. It
Okay.
was what direct experiences do you have that would be helpful? So,
If it does,
no, you're good.
You good?
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
Steve, now it's your turn.
Good, thank you. Welcome, Kevin. Learned all about our $145 million project today that includes just not only the building, but our campus development project with the $6 million athletic complex. If you look forward to the next 10 years, what would your plan be to generate capital to maintain and replace necessary components of the current building and campus?
Definitely possible usage of the facilities that we offer, at cost, and really be competitive with our pricing. And for example, when I look at the field, I was really amazed. 3 different fields between the football, the baseball. I mean, those are money makers. Those are money makers. Utilizing this space as here, this couple of spaces, this space, as well as the restaurant itself for companies might want to do very small retreats. So offering up all these opportunities for viable income. And those are opportunities. And again, I think instead of being one person making that decision, and that's the one thing I really want the committee to really understand about me. I do not want to make unilateral decisions unless they are warranted. When we make decisions about finance, we should all be at the table looking at these alternatives because we all have the same purpose in mind. So really getting with a collective folks and saying, what are these opportunities that can be presented? If it's utilizing our space, again, being very competitive with our pricing, that is really conducive to someone saying yes. Also with the field usage, understanding that if that does, that's the wear and tear, and that's going to be maintenance. And so we have to make sure that we are making not only enough to maintain our ability, but also to have a little bit of extra change for future endeavors going forward.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, the Minuteman superintendent needs to be a master politician who can successfully pursue the interests of the district to those outside of the school. And a few examples are present budgets and key information to district town officials and town meeting. Be our advocate to the legislative delegation and to Beacon Hill. Communicate with business and industry partners. Develop and negotiate private public partnerships. Be involved and respected at various related business and professional associations. Be Minuteman's advocate for CTE education. Describe at least 3 consequential incidents that demonstrate your ability to do this successfully. We are specifically referring to political communication skills needed for success outside of the school.
Well, I think the first event is creating the career championship, which allowed several members of the higher ed as well as industry.
You better start all over again.
I got you. So 3 consequential events. I think one, starting with the Career Champions Network, which was creating a network of higher ed education and industry partners to help formulate Madison Park's program advisories, because advisories are the lifeblood of each program. I would say a third was really creating the early college model of getting buy-in from the district, from the Boston Public Schools, and the city of Boston to create an early college model in which students did not pay for college coursework in their work towards an associate's degree. And that was actually at Madison Park, Governor Baker, as well as Secretary Pizer and a few other dignitaries initiated that with Mayor Walsh at Madison Park. And that was a lot of work done behind the scenes of working with city officials and higher ed, as well as the support of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in making sure that it happened. And what better place to start was at Madison Park. So it was really a beautiful day that really was the impetus of great growth for our students in our school community. And a third is partnerships. And I'm gonna bring up, if I may, bring up two particular partnerships. One, and I go back to my days in Springfield, for Bay State Health, the partnership with Bay State Health Systems. And Bay State Health Systems was the largest, still is the largest employer in Western Massachusetts. And we embarked on a 5-year, $4 million partnership that required, it was not just money, but also with in-kind donations and time and talents of Bay State. And it was announced and really leveraged by our school committee at that time, but also endorsed by our city council. And the president, Steve Bradley, who was at the time, he was a vice president of operations at Bay State, really had the impetus for us to really grow this for students, not only just to get experience in the allied health sector, but for really to be the impetus for them to be the feeder system for Bay State Health Systems. The program grew from roughly 80 students to over 200 students in this one program. The program grew so rapidly and so expansively that we actually had to go to another building to house it. And it was just a great opportunity, again, from an employer who had a lot of leverage in the city of Boston to really assist us in these endeavors. And these are some of the partnerships that we look forward to have. We're currently embarking at Madison Park, embarking on an 8-year partnership with, excuse me, with Mass General in their Cambridge Street project, which would start with our construction trades as they were just really doing some expansion, starting with construction trades, but would eventually involve out of 14 to 16 of our 20 programs. And these are the types of expansive partnerships that cross multiple programs that one was used to in Springfield and developed here and would love the opportunity. I want to put the emphasis on love the opportunity to have that be a part of the Minuteman School community.
Thank you. You get me again. How do you support and inspire the teachers, support staff? Thank you. See, they need to always correct me and keep me going. Thank you, Jeff. Here's your question. Describe the role that you have had in developing an annual operating and capital budget for the schools you have been employed by, and how you obtained acceptance of your initiatives.
With an annual budget, you always put forth what are going to be needs from my perspective. What are you going to need from a teacher? We start with the teaching force. How many teachers are we going to need? What particular teachers are going to need? What itinerant staff? And when I say itinerant staff, are paraprofessionals and other support staff for students. And that's a number. And so coming up with that number, which is pretty much set in our urban districts where we can get it. But when we look at instructional supplies, equipment replacement, and that's doing a real firm assessment on needs. And that's across many programs. And again, when you assess all of this, and then we look at, and I think earlier was asked about programming. Are we going to provide additional supplemental programming? And there's a cost factor. And so once we really get an assessment, and it's kind of time consuming, we come up with a round number. And in Boston and in urban municipalities, it's kind of because it's kind of set for you. Those price tags are set for you. But really understanding that number and then putting it forth, and then having people do, and it's all based on enrollment, obviously, and I believe it's similar here as well. And then it's a little bit of bartering going back and forth. And we want to make, if we do have to make cuts, they are as far away from the classroom as possible, or the programming. All cuts need to be as far away from classrooms as possible. But I think once we go through the teasing out of the needs, obviously for staffing, supplies, equipment, supplemental program, and any other miscellaneous budget items, these are then we present these items to the school committee, and we go from there. And it's always our hope is that we are not millions of dollars apart, because once that occurs, we've got some issues. But I think if we come into the ballpark where we're tens of thousands of dollars away, there are things that we can start looking at, again, through our partnerships, through Mr. Rudin, through grant opportunities that will always, for someone with Governor Baker, and it's unfortunate, I don't know anyone's political affiliation, but he has been a true friend and advocate for vocational education. And we're hoping that that continues going through those means. But, in this day and age, there are grants. And again, it's something that we should not depend on fully, because as you know, grants have a sunset time. They do sunset, and who knows what's going on. But if it can be a short-term fill while we look at other means to get it done from a permanent and sustainable perspective, I think we'll be okay.
Thank you. Judy.
All right. Again, welcome, Mr. McCaskill. How do you support and inspire the teachers, support staff, and administrators in the schools where you have worked? Please provide some specific examples. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Crocker. One, being at work every single day. And I brought it up, tongue in cheek during the 245 session. 34 years, I haven't taken a sick day. And I have not lost my enthusiasm for being here. And it's very evident. People see me, they see, again, the affirmative conversations, the affirmative way I walk, the constant movement, constant emotion, constant affirmations. And I think it's not an act. And I want that to really be infectious with folks, that everything that we do counts. Celebrate success, be it student success or educator success. Give accolades when accolades are due, and really create excitement about being here, being in these moments here at Minuteman, reveling in the work that we do for young people. I think that is so important. When they see that enthusiasm from one, it really becomes an infectious thing. And that's something that I pride myself on. And it's not for show. It is really genuine excitement about the work that's being done for young people. And I think the reason I get excited, because I'm getting excited now, sweating all over the place, is because you see the future, the prospects of what these young people can do. And when everyone is pulling, everyone is supportive, and most importantly, and it's interesting that you say with the adults, it's important that we recognize the efforts of all our adults here, from the custodians to our administrators, and really revel in it and make sure that it's very personable. So those are ways that you really do it. And I think when done, it works. An example, just show the attendance levels of every place where I have been. The attendance levels of staff have always been at the 95th percentile. And that says something about a staff, especially when you've had situations in which staff attendance had been questioned.
Thank you. Jeff. Was it, did I miss? No? That's right.
I'm good. How are you doing? Talk about your philosophy of collective bargaining and how it fits into the strategic direction of the district. What should the role of the superintendent be in this process?
Hopefully at times the voice of reason. Hopefully at times the voice of reason. But I really think when we look at it collectively bargain, and I've been involved in two. First was with the Springfield Public Schools when Putnam was identified as a pilot school. And we had to write a work election agreement for all staff. And that kind of was counter to the Springfield Education Aid Association, which was the union, about working extended hours and what does that look like and what does that look like from a pay perspective. And I can honestly say that 88% after working with the union and us as administrative team, as well as some of the district folks, 88% passed that work election agreement on the first go. And second, I think working with Madison Park, when the school was designated as an underperforming school, obviously every staff member had to go through a rehiring. We had to literally let everyone go and go through that process, which meant that they were working longer hours and negotiating with both the teachers union as well as the administrators union. And we had several meetings, I would say more than several meetings with union reps at various places. And again, it was a 4 or 5 month ordeal, but we came to conclusions on how many, the hours that were going to be worked. And most importantly, it was the compensation that was going to be paid. And we came up with an amount that was agreeable for both sides, that would not break the bank of the Boston Public Schools, but was a fair measure of income for those students and those administrators. And that was in effect for 5 years. And so again, I believe in respect. I mentioned that this afternoon, respect, even though we may be on opposite sides, but respect for each other as more individuals and understanding the process, but most importantly, being fair and understanding where our North Star is still going to be that commitment that we make to students. And to close out to the role of the superintendent is to really look at it from both sides of the ledger. What are we asking of our educators? How much are we current? What's the current situation going on? What is the request? And is it in the best interest of the school, of the district, of what we can actually offer? And really go through a compromise and see where we can land. And I think really having that as someone who really is a quasi arbiter of this situation. You're welcome.
Thank you. Alice?
Hi. This is somewhat related to the earlier question on staff. Kevin, how will you involve staff in exploring, developing, and initiating innovative programs, policies, and goals at Minuteman? Please provide us with a specific example of your leadership style in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Luca. I believe in collaboration and distributive leadership. And it's one of the things where nothing should be done in a singular vacuum. And so when we are looking at programming, and I'll use several examples, one of the pieces that we want to look at, and we were looking at in Boston, how do we expand programming across certain fields? And when I say certain fields, and I use the term renewable energy, like solar, because it's something that is not it's just not in our curriculum from Bessie. But yet students who have these skills have a leg up. So working with the electrical program, let's talk about how do we expand on this in the current paradigm that you're teaching. Do we do it in faith? How do you feel about working in faith? Tell me, how do we implement this? Because here's the opportunities if implemented. What does that look like? What will it take? Will it take professional development from you that I need to support you on? What are those pieces? Again, working as a collective, not telling, but how do we make this work? Because it's not for Kevin McCaskill. It is for every student in this electoral program to have an additional skill set to be more marketable than they are in these emerging fields. We're looking at something similar with electrical vehicles for our automotive program. I am not an automotive person. I know how to get in my car, hit that button with that gas, hit the brake, and the car starts. When I see a red light or an orange light, I know to go to the service station. But when we look at those opportunities, how do we make our students a step above, not better people, but better technicians? Because this is where we're going to be. Let's get a bit beyond the curve before anyone else. So again, working as a collaborative, understanding, getting industry individuals in and saying, why can't we just form a working group and come out with a product, an actual action plan, a plan that we're going to stick to and make it happen? We did this with this unique program called Machines Making Machines at Madison Park. It was coming out of the Center of Bits and Atoms at MIT, where the use of 3D printers to make other machines, Mel King was, believe it, an impetus for that. Mel King is a legend in the city of Boston, and this was his lifelong dream, and he felt no other place to make this happen but Madison Park. Very innovative in nature, but something that was not done in other places. So we got a working group with folks from MIT, some local technology folks, and it's still a work in progress, believe it or not. After 5 years, it's still a work in progress. But really making these things happen through collaboration. It can only happen through a collaboration. And right now, working with mass robotics, through a couple of schools that we have in the queue for Boston, really looking at them developing their own teams to really make some of the skill acquisition to this new emerging world come to fruition. So I feel excited about it. I felt even more excited walking through what I saw today with some of the equipment. I'm saying, they're there. How do we get that to 2.0? And it's always the interesting, but I say it's the most exciting piece, and involve everyone that we can within those fields. Because when folks feel that they've been asked to collaborate, and their opinions have been validated and wanted, people tend to work towards it. And just like anything else, people talk. And that's what we want them to talk about, the collaborative spirit, the collegial spirit that we have here at Minuteman in expanding programming.
Thank you, Kevin. Pam.
Okay, thank you. So I want to go back to the question of enrollment. So Minuteman does not right now represent the diversity of students in our towns as much as we would like to. Can you give us a menu of strategies that would be likely to attract all of the different student populations?
Absolutely. If I may, it says in my resume, I coached college basketball for like 20 years. And one of the things that we used to revel as college coaches, and we always say, just let us get to the living room with the parents. We'll get the students. And I see this happening across our catchment area here at Minuteman. Literally going to those entities in which we see in a diverse community and going and saying, these are the opportunities. And if it takes sitting in the living room of prospective students and families, so be it, let's make it happen. To see that, and this is something I know that is a commitment from Minuteman to be a more diverse school. And this is something that I have known for years, even prior to applying to here, just talking with Dr. Boquillan. It is something that Minuteman strives for. And I want to be a part of them. So really getting into those communities and looking at and really appealing to folks that this is the place to be. And even though, the demographics are roughly where over a little bit over 20%, I believe, are students of color here, this is a community, a school community that will embrace you. And if it embraces you, they also have what you need to be successful. They've got 19 programs where you can find a passion and really to map out your career. And that would be a commitment, and that's going just to the sending communities, but also, again, I put up Watertown. Those communities that where we get students, really being very visible in those communities of really preaching the gospel of vocational education. And I think having a voice in doing that and being very vocal, ringing that bell as loud as I can and as much as I can, I think those would be opportunities. But even going out into communities that are outside our area and letting them know what we do. So when someone talks about DEI, they bring up Minuteman. You know, Minuteman is actively engaged in these opportunities to become more diverse. We're not a part of it, but we're very impressed. That's what we want to hear from folks who really have no vested interest in our school community, but can talk about what we're doing to others to have some influence on that. So I definitely look forward to those opportunities.
Michael.
Thank you, Ford. This was the question that Ford was alluding to previously that invites a longer response, if you wish. Would you please describe a few of your most consequential successes and a few of your most consequential failures as an administrator, and what you learned from those? And these should be incidents which impact an entire school or district, not just you or another individual.
Well, the success is, I think, throughout my career is improving student outcomes. I think, yeah, going through with successes is student outcomes, be it that it's MCAS, improved MCAS scores, decreased dropout rates, increased graduation rates, and the number of students participating in post-secondary education opportunities as well as in the world of work. Those numbers are, I think, of success, but also bringing about access and opportunity to programming that was not at a particular school. And I go back to either the dual enrollment and early college opportunities, as well as additional vocational program, as well as supplemental programs to support student learning. And I think those have been across the continuum in all my roles throughout Springfield, Hartford, as well as the Boston Public Schools. I want to identify some failures, and one was a monumental one that did have an effect on the school, and that was my experience at Putnam. I mean, an audit was done upon my departure to go to Hartford to become the director of secondary schools and school design, and it was about the practices regarding outside funds. And when I look back at it, I said it was one of the greatest learning lessons of my life. And as I alluded, I learned a lot, but I learned quite a bit from here. And that audit revealed that there were financial practices and strategies that were not conducive to policy or regulations. And that was, you know, to your point, Mr. Ruderman, it was a personal, but it was a hit on the school as well as a black eye on the district. Because now a school had to go through scrutiny and I was no longer there. And I owned that. It happened on my watch. Individuals paid the price for that. But again, there's a fact that I put the school through that. And it was a lesson that I learned as it will never, ever happen again. I went into that position at Putnam, coming from an elementary school, and having ignorance and naivete about what was required of the position. I assumed things were getting done and trusted the processes that had been previously there, instead of doing the due diligence of inquiry, of asking questions, of asking for additional supports, of asking colleagues across the Commonwealth about what was going on. And instead, we just kept plowing forward. And as a parent once told me about when we were talking about his child tripping over the same log, which he's making the same mistake twice, I vowed never to make that mistake again. And if you look at the books of the budgets that I had in Hartford, well over $1 million in each of the departments where I worked, flawless. At Madison Park, we were audited 3 times. flawless. And actually, the protocols for the student accounts and revolving accounts, Madison Park's protocols are used for the Boston Public Schools and other schools. And again, learning that valuable lesson. And because it was, it was all in the plastered in the newspaper. And it's something, it's an indelible mark that I know will stay, but I vowed that that would never, ever happen again. And those are the lessons that I think are so poignant, where you take it, a complete disaster of my lack of oversight to make me better than I was. And those are the types of learning lessons that I think are just so important. They're so important going forward. I think that's the one consequence. I think an author failure is the ability that we did not make enough progress at Madison Park. We did not make enough progress over that 6-year period. We needed more. We were making improvement and it was gradual, but we needed to make more. And so those are things I felt that is an unfinished position. From my personal perspective, it's an unfinished job. And more needed to be done. And I went to central office, obviously, but those are two direct ones that I can really give you at this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Dave?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about relationships with business partners and alumni. So could you please tell us what you might expect to expand Minuteman's business relationships to allow for current or future career opportunities for our students?
Oh, look, yeah, definitely, Mr. O'Connor, looking at the current program advisory boards and seeing, are there opportunities for growth? And one of the things I am really big on are those collaborative partnerships. And what I mean by collaborative partnerships, they run across several programs. For example, and I brought up the Mass General, which really was going to involve 14 to 16 programs, because now you're dealing with one entity that has these opportunities. So looking really to enhance and promote growth of program advisory board members, making sure they are actively engaged in the work that we are doing here, but also with alumni. And it was great having one of the alumni on the call at 5 o'clock, having them coming back and speaking to students within the programs that they were in. There is nothing like seeing someone who has been sitting in the same position as you, hearing that they have gone through it and they've made it, to really provide the impetus for you to walk through. So actively engaging them, really, and I see that Minuteman through the communications department really pushes those communications out about where alumni are at this point in time. I think it's exciting because most places don't do that. So when students have the ability to read about graduates from here and what they're doing and they're maintaining themselves within the industry fields, it bodes well for them to say, I will get through this program and I can do the same thing. So those are the two, I think, really looking at how do we support that? And fortunately, being in Boston, we have really gained some really high-powered partners. And who's to say that you can't come 16 miles to Lexington? Who's to say that you can't come 16 miles to Lexington and be a part of this type of this program, this successful programming that's here? But really connecting with alumni, but really having alumni days. Maybe it's a weekend event that we have to celebrate alumni coming in. There's a number. I always see the homecomings you have in college, the homecoming, if we have homecoming, making sure that we get those communications to get as many local alumni coming back to their school of origin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Some of the vocational schools in our area have been very successful in securing financial donations, public-private partnerships, and grants for their schools for equipment, for program expansion, and even for dedicated space for programs. So I know you've talked about this a little bit before, but what's your experience in fundraising of all types?
Well, we had close to $2 million in grants at Madison Park over a 6-year period. It's with the workforce capital grants. We received life science grants, the Commonwealth Corporation's Career Technical Institute grants. Matter of fact, we're operating 2 currently at Madison Park. And so those are great opportunities. And in really looking at those startup grants that the Department of Education, they have a $10,000 grant and a few $20,000 grants for startup opportunities for programming. So really taking advantage of those opportunities that are very present. But then looking at the US, one of the things we were really looking at Madison Park, we're looking at the United States Department of Education, some of the workforce development grants going forward. I think those are untapped opportunities. And I think we just didn't explore enough, but I will really love to work with the group to really say, how do we really tap into, because that infrastructure bill that President Biden is pushing, that means dollars. That's a lot of dollars. And it's for a lot of years, because as folks know, I'm just preaching to the choir here. Infrastructure is crumbling under our feet here in the United States, especially in states like Massachusetts, where weather really corrodes. So we need to take advantage of those opportunities. But that will, again, be very aggressive, very assertive in applying ourselves for additional funding opportunities, but also connecting with local industry for in-kind donations. And if they're making a total overhaul of equipment, their equipment that they're overhauling may be better than what we have here. And if it's something that we can use, by all means, let's do it. It's a great tax write-off for them. It's a great learning opportunity for our students. And again, no cost to the district.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, the Minuteman Technical Institute provides postgraduate training for young adults and those interested in a career change. What is your vision for MTI, and how do you see it fitting in with Minuteman in the future?
As stated previously, I believe with the teachers, in our meeting with teachers, MTI is an important entity here of really filling a short-term gap in industry. If you can train adults while we are training young people to go to more from a longevity perspective, from a long-term perspective, but provide career changers, those who have been recently incarcerated coming back to acquire skills, but adults who just really need more training. What better place than our vocational schools? So the vision of it is really to continue the work that MTI has currently been doing, continue it, but then how do we really connect that to the emerging industries? And we spoke earlier about with renewable energy, electrical vehicles, smart building technology. I think those where, again, these emerging industry fields need to be addressed. Why not here? Why not here? So again, it fits right into the paradigm of really galvanizing the economy of scale in our immediate region, but also providing every single adult the opportunity to really gain gainful skills, because nothing is getting cheaper, as everyone can attest. And if I bring it back to Boston, this was really a huge issue in Boston about skill acquisition, especially in our neighborhoods of Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester. And so we can create these programs where they are getting viable skills, obtaining industry credentials. It really provides them the opportunity to stay in their cities of origin. And we look forward to doing that here, where individuals can get the gainful skill, get skills, obtain skills to live a comfortable life working for, participating in the economies of their respective communities.
Thank you. Kevin, we expect that you will be active in state organizations and business and union associations to develop opportunities for Minuteman and its students. What experience do you have in these areas? We expect that you will be active in state organizations and business and union associations to develop opportunities for Minuteman and its students. And what experience do you have in these areas?
Well, the experience is kind of expansive between obviously belonging to, I'm currently on the working group for the Boston Green Jobs Initiative, which has been tremendous. I was appointed by the past administrator, but we are continuing through the Mayor Wu's regime. I'm an active member of the Association of Career Technical Education, ACTE. Massachusetts Girls in Trade. I'm on the steering committee for the Girls in Trade. I am also a very active member of several advisory boards for the North Bennett Street School, which is an outstanding opportunity and I'd love to talk more about that at some other time, but outstanding opportunity. Also with the connections to primarily 3 local unions, the Local 103, DC 30, IUPAT, DC 35, and the Carpenters Union. And with beginning with, and also with the plumbers, Local 12, and the pipe fitters as well, 537. So really being involved in those, sitting in on, just making sure that we are at the table when we're talking about opportunities and having them be a part of our program advisories are so important. Obviously, I've been a part of MAVA for many years, Massachusetts Association for Vocational Administrators. They have been just a tremendous support system. I spoke about the Career Champions Network when you have individuals from Suffolk Construction, Boston Medical Center, Mass General, and a few other smaller entities, small HVAC entities as well. Whittier Street Health Center, but very known in Boston, Northeastern University. I want to share something about Northeastern, because when you say Northeastern, you think about students going to college. Well, we have a co-op opportunity where we have a partnership with Northeastern in their trades area, where co-op opportunities were created for our carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and facilities management at Northeastern. And it has been such a success going forward. And if it works at Northeastern, well, a lot of these other institutions have trade areas as well. So really looking to expand those opportunities across the board. Working with the city of Boston City Fleet, all the vehicles from the dump trucks to the garbage trucks to just their vehicles, having our students working, our automotive students, our automotive technology and automotive collision students working with the city, because it's an expansive fleet for those folks who know Boston. So really creating those opportunities and also belonging and being a real advisory member of the UMass Transportation Center, which provides opportunities of students getting their CDL license, as well as students gaining employment in municipalities, departments of public works. And so I look forward to really expanding those opportunities here at Minuteman.
Thank you, Kevin. Judy.
So my question's about education.
Wow.
Here we go. So what are your ideas on expanding opportunities for students to obtain co-op jobs and attend community college during high school? And what have your experiences been?
Expand co-op, expand opportunities, warp speed. I think one, creating a RocksMap, which was Madison Park's dual enrollment and early college initiative, was a tremendous success. And Mr. Ruderman, that was, again, a huge success for us with that. I just want to add that to it. Again, when you have a program in which RocksMap was a Deval Patrick and Mayor Menino initiative that started with Roxbury Community College. And in 2013, fast forward to 2015, had not had traction. And it was asked of us if we would just take the whole initiative over at Madison Park. And this was done by Gerald Chertavian, who was the CEO of Europe. And he was also at the time the president of the Board of Trustees at Roxbury Community College. And so the only entity I saw, because this was supposed to be this all-encompassing initiative with industry and post-secondary, and we really came up as a collective. It was about 4 of us. And we said, why don't we just make this our dual enrollment arm? And so it became that, and we took over the process. And if you look at the numbers, in 2014, 15 students participated in this program, and they attained 45 credits. Fast forward to 2020, 83 students, 741 attained transferable credits. I think that's a success. The only 3 students in the history of Boston Public Schools that attained their associate's degree prior to their high school diploma. No other school, and we're talking about 3 exam schools, a number of pilot schools, and you have this underperforming vocational school that gets this done. And so it was a huge success. And one of the things looking at, obviously, the work here, Middlesex Community College, why can't those same opportunities exist here? In the unique piece that we had at Madison Park, we were looking at how do we align the programs in the post-secondary program to the program of study here, their shop areas here. And so it was very intentional. And we would look to really do the same thing with Middlesex. They have a nursing program. Well, we have health assisting here. How do we align those programs? I believe they have environmental science at Middlesex. How do we align those programs for those students actually getting college credit going forward? So those are things we really want to really examine. And then obviously, if there's, let's look at costs, let's look at things that because the state is really endorsing these types of programs. Neshoba Valley Votech has this, they have it. So why doesn't Minuteman have it? As far as co-op is concerned, there is nothing better than hands-on practical experience than actually doing. Students leaving campus, going to work is a great thing. Why? It serves as an example that this can happen to you as well. The greatest thing we had at both Putnam and at Madison Park, when those co-op students go out for that week, that we had the week on, week off, they're gone and they come back with that pay stub. And that pay stub, it must have been, they were just showing people what they did. Why? Because they have this skill, they have the grades, they have the attendance, they have the recommendation from their instructor. That they had the tools, they had the goods to go out and make it happen, increase those opportunities. But that takes employers. So that means getting people at the table who are willing to take that chance. So definitely go full blown with it, both opportunities. Mhm.
So Kevin, what are the biggest challenges for you in switching from your current role to the superintendency of the Minuteman District? What new skill sets do you need in order to be a successful superintendent here?
The biggest challenge is really, shifting from an urban perspective to a regional perspective. And that's gonna be a learning curve. And I would look forward to getting much support from the school committee, but also utilizing MAVA as a support system as well. Again, it goes, Mr. Ruderman, when we talked about failures, going to my colleagues and saying, what were some of the when you started, what were some of the stumbling blocks? Learning from past mistakes so that they are not taken, but really getting a lay of the land going forward. It's going to be one of the pieces is getting used to a 100% inclusionary model of education. As we know in our urban districts, we have substantially separate for special education, substantially separate programming, for students where the classes are much smaller. Here, it's a 100% inclusion. It is phenomenal. I love it. And it was something that I have to go back to 2002 when I was an elementary school principal in Springfield, where we had this experimental model of not only special education, but full inclusion EL in one classroom, and the teachers loved it. And then no one else wanted, then we didn't follow up in the middle schools or the high schools. So I definitely want to see how that's working, really because one of the things I spoke earlier today, why can't Minuteman be the lab school of all these outstanding practices going forward on both sides of an academic, vocational, as to social emotional learning, why can't we be that lab school where other school districts, other individual schools are coming here to see the practices here? So I think really understanding the regional effect, working with different municipalities, as you know, some are larger than others, working with and I believe in some instances, you work with selectmen in some, the nomenclature of the particular municipalities and the nuances of each community. I think those will be definitely with the learning curve. I don't see them as challenges. I see them as learning opportunities for me personally, in order to better serve those communities and serve the district at large. And then obviously with the transition from a superintendent who has been here for 15 years and has been, has seen a lot, and transition to an entity who was coming in as a newcomer to the region. So really galvanizing the trust, gaining the trust of staff is going to be paramount, both administratively as well as the teaching and support staff. It's going to be tremendous. I also see going to each individual community and going through and saying, acclimating myself to those communities. Do I see it as a challenge? No, I do not see that as a challenge, because we all want the same thing. We're really gaining the trust of these communities. And trust isn't just something where I tell you to trust me. Well, I think politicians have been doing that for years. And I just want to really, when you say Kevin McCaskill, I may not agree with everything he says, but I can trust him and I can respect him. So that's going to take time. And I'm hoping that it does not take 2, 3, 4 years, but again, my presence, continuous presence in these communities, and being very open and very honest with my dialogue, and continuing to have an open door policy will prove to be I think it will prove to be very beneficial going forward.
Thank you, Kevin. Alice.
Hi. My question is about innovation. What new career pathways would you explore adding at Minuteman in the next 3 years, and why? And in responding, please consider what curriculum shops or initiatives will benefit from innovation and vision.
Great question, and I don't, everyone's always says great question when they're trying to figure out an answer. But I really want to get the pulse of industry. And if I look at what Minuteman currently has and what it doesn't have, I am really intrigued with facilities management. And the reason why I say facilities management, everyone thinks because it's when you say the old name for it, building and property maintenance, well, that's a handy name. But when you say facilities management, these individuals have to be that their acumen in building automation is crucial. That means coding, that means lighting, sprinkler systems, and the such, smart building technology. They have to have this. The Boston Public Library had a position, it must have been open for 2 years, couldn't fill a position. They did a whole renovation, couldn't get anybody to run it. And so facilities, especially the new facilities that are going up, individuals cannot be the one with the hammer and the wrench and the tool belt. They really have to have the smart to understand heating and cooling, as I indicated, irrigation systems, and having that program really focus and hone in on it. Think about what opportunities, especially down in the greater Boston area with these new buildings going up, of having the ability to manage that, because there isn't a dearth of individuals who know it. The older employees will not learn it. And there are just not enough individuals exposed to it early enough. So if we have a program that is really built with green technology in place as well, where there's all types of industry credentials that young people can actually get, I really see that as a real blossoming program. That's just one. And it's amazing how this program, believe it or not, is at Roxbury Community College, and no one knows about it. And it's amazing how we do have a partnership with that. But off the top of my head, that would be one, because one, it's so so unique and so full of scope and so full of opportunity going forward. I think cybersecurity is another one. Obviously, with what's going on in today's, it's Northeastern has an outstanding cybersecurity. To partner with them, as well as a few entities and locally, would be an outstanding opportunity. And that's an offshoot of the programming and web development, but it's more so IT, which there are two separate programs. There's the old, I call it IT. I think if you use the proper term, it's information support systems and networking. But how do we look at that? Is that become a separate program? Do we coordinate an integrated program with programming? I think it'll be a great conversation, but having it really have that cybersecurity for would be fantastic. So those are two off the top of my head, but I really want to look at what is the emerging pieces? Because I think some of the emerging pieces, I alluded to it earlier, can be offshoots within current programs, like electric vehicles with automotive, some of the things that we're looking at with solar and windmills. Well, it's actually electrical can do those things. Obviously, with electrical too, would be our metal fabrication and joint technologies with the welding, because someone has to fabricate these things. So I think, how do you go to a 2.0 or a 3.0 in certain programs for emerging technologies, emerging programming?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Pam?
Okay, I have the last of our prepared questions here. And this is about special needs education. The Minuteman has a large percentage of students on IEPs. What would you do to ensure that Minuteman continues to be a welcoming environment for students with disabilities?
Thank you, Mr. Make sure that we continue as a 100% inclusionary model of a school. I am so amazed at that. And again, it's something I'll probably be quoting it on my way back home this evening, because that does not happen in our urban districts. It just does not happen. And to see that students, although there's maybe two educators in the room, no one knows who's special ed. That's the beauty part of an inclusive model. No one knows unless someone identifies themselves. But really rally around those supports, making sure that we are just not compliant, but we are really adhering to that federal document of that IEP, making sure and to have parents understand what we're doing as well. So many times, as students get older, and I think once they become 18, they can sign themselves, but I think parents need to always know, here it is, and you have to have the annual meetings anyway, but really looking at how do we increase opportunities for these students as well, that we are truly committed to our 100% inclusionary model, providing any and all supports that are needed. And it's amazing where I looked at it, the state indicates this year it's like 40.8% of the students are special needs. And it goes right into alignment of past schools. Madison Park is between 34 and 41%. Putnam was as high as 42% when I first started there. And as you know, with our cities, we are really accustomed, but there are so many delineations where the substantially separate get pulled out. And it's so unfortunate because and it's not intentional that they're not given the same opportunities, it's because we don't push and progress forward. And that's something that I hope that this is something that we relish and we cherish, that we have that type of model.
Kevin, thank you. We have gone through our prepared questions, but you are not off the hook. We are going to go into follow-up questions after 5-minute break. So everybody can take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope those of you at home or wherever you are took a little break also. Kevin, we're now going to be asking you follow-up questions, the school committee. And we have 35 minutes or so. So, and I'm going to start with a question from Jennifer Leone, who's not here, but this is her question. What does the staff that you've worked with at your various places think of you and your leadership style? And if I was going to call one or two of them up, what would they say about you?
Probably handsome, I would say. I digress. I digress. Hardworking, committed, dedicated, driven, student-centered, fair. I think those are really the ones that come right to mind immediately. I mean, being a former athlete, I believe in working hard to achieve success and setting and also a role model as well, and role modeling as well, being a role model for what we want to see in everyone that works in our employ. So those are the ones that I would really venture to say would be the immediate ones right off the top.
Would they say anything bad about you?
I think with driven is that pushing too hard, being non-realistic about goals. And I think that goes back to the type of students that we would get. But I believe that every student is capable of great things. That's not just a cliche. It's that if you put them in the right circumstances, they'll well surpass what we expect of them. So having high expectations, so unreasonable expectations. Now, we're not expecting students. I don't expect every student to go to Harvard. I don't expect every student to get to MIT. I don't expect every single automotive technology student to be in that field. But the expectation is that everyone can achieve at their highest level at all times. And so those are things I would say.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Pam.
Hi. We know that through COVID that many students are experiencing learning gaps. And one of the things that DESE is promoting is what they call an acceleration roadmap, saying, really move forward as a way of addressing the learning gaps that are created by COVID. I want to know how you would balance that concept of accelerated learning right now with social emotional issues that many students are facing.
And I think it's a big concern that we all need to have. And I don't want to say this tongue in cheek, and I may go a roundabout way, and it's not intentional, because I really want us to really understand the emotional toil that has gone on with some students as well as staff. We are not everyone. We are not inside the brains and the bodies of everyone. And so when we talk about acceleration, that will look different for every single student depending on their circumstances. And that's not, people may differ in opinion, but that's not an excuse. It's reality. And I have no further to look than the city of Boston, where some of our students were living, how they were living, how they were affected by this pandemic, and to ask someone who had to work in order to sustain their family and talk about accelerated learning, that's completely different than someone who had two folks in a household who continued to work, had stability at home. So it looks differently. So when I hear these things and again, I agree that there has to be some mechanism, but I go back to vocational education with the integration, that integrative model, and it's strand, for those folks who know the framework, strand 3. Embedding and integrating academics into the vocational areas, which is what this school does well. That's a way of accelerating. When students are in shop, they're learning the core content of English language arts, science, and mathematics. They're gaining those concepts. And it's not through osmosis. It's through the practices and strategies and pedagogy that our vocational staff are doing on a daily basis. Now, that won't happen in our traditional schools because they don't have the model. But really understanding to continue to do the work at a pace that is conducive to everyone's well-being. You know, we talked about this earlier at another session. We don't know when we're coming out of this. Dr. Fauci cannot say this. Dr. Walensky cannot say this. The president, you just don't know. And when we look at certain districts and certain schools within certain districts, staffs are burning out. And if the staff is burning out, there's no such thing as accelerated learning. It is really babysitting students, keeping students supervised while they're in school. So when we look at the Minuteman model, continue to do those things to support staff and support students from an SEL perspective, but really continue to fine tune that strength, that integrative approach to teaching and learning. I think that's the method. You know, when I look at the traditional school, the traditional and comprehensive schools, you know, there are models that you can do something similar where you add where COVID becomes the actual lesson for standards, where you attach math standards to COVID because you see statistics every single day. How do you write about that from an English language part? How current events from a social studies perspective? And what is the science behind it? How does this work? How does it get transmitted? Students get these things. So now you're actually accelerated learning to a relevant topic going forward. Those are just a couple of things. But I think, again, vocational schools have such an advantage while also maintaining the psyche of both students and staff.
Thank you. Michael.
Thank you for it. Mr. McCaskill, just a quick question about something on your resume. You are an education specialist candidate at UMass Amherst, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What degree does that program confer?
Ed administration. It's a ed specialist is a step below the doctorate.
Okay. And your resume says you entered that program September of 2007?
Correct.
That's a long time, but 14 and a half years ago. Are you making progress towards that?
I've completed all the coursework. I just have to put in the paperwork, and I have been remiss for whatever reasons, no one's else fault but mine. I've been done with the coursework for well over 2 years.
Okay.
So that it's a matter of calling them and paying. I forgot how much I still owe UMass. And because I haven't been enrolled, I didn't know that you keep accumulating costs, like, you know, even though I wasn't enrolled, but that will be figured out this spring. And I'll get the ed specialist. It'll be on my resume.
Okay, thank you.
That'll be updated, sir.
Jeffrey.
Hi, Kevin. You mentioned unfinished business at Madison Park. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wave my magic water bottle 3 times. You're now no longer you're not the executive director, you're the superintendent of Madison Park, who is now independent. It's the Madison Park you know, except you don't have to deal with the Boston administration anymore. You have a small pile of money and a 5-year time frame. Name the 3 major changes, realistic changes, that you would make at Madison Park that you think would make it a far better success story than it has been in the past.
Number 1, go to a full 100% inclusionary model. Reduce the, flip side is reduce the number of substantially separate programs that we have. There are maybe 1 or 2 that have to exist, but substantially really reduce those opportunities. Number 2, provide funding for those supplemental programs of tutorial and student support, which were very effective, especially Saturday school. Increasing professional development on the co-teach model. Also, have folks from the regional schools, really, again, professional development on strand 3, which is the integrative, the embedded academics into the vocational area. If we have some exemplar practices from individual teachers to teach that to our staff. I would go with the Collins writing method for English language arts. It's an outstanding approach and works well with vocational schools, which was abandoned, and it needs to come back. And this costs no money, have a dedicated school committee to Madison Park, similar to here. That does not report to the Boston Public Schools. And definitely continue to increase program advisory boards and dual enrollment, early college opportunities, as well as co-op opportunities. And an aspirational one, which we are actually currently working on in Boston, create a first of its kind vocational middle school. So now you have a direct feeder of a number of students coming in who have been properly managed and educated in this approach to education.
Kevin, I'm going to ask a question again. And this came up this afternoon with the staff, and that's why I'm asking him. Please talk to the school committee about an incident that you had, I believe it was in Madison Park, with a student that resulted in a suspension and what that meant to you.
Yeah, I was placed on in December of 2000, I was placed on leave addressing a student when I grabbed the student because it was a student who I'd known who was really doing things that he wasn't supposed to, hanging out with students where I know his parents would not have approved of that. And he was acting in a very unnatural and unfamiliar way in religion. So he was grabbed and he took exception to it, which I understood. We called the parent on the spot. I indicated to the parent, and she went, well, you don't have to do that to my. I said, well, again, it wasn't to the point where it was malicious, but that was immediate. That was immediate. So after I called, we were all set. He went on to his next class. The parent obviously called central office and indicated that I had violated a policy of assaulting a student, and I was placed on leave immediately. No questions, just to leave the building. And obviously, when you have those, you have all the pieces that go on the investigative meeting from central office. And when it involves a child, you have to go through the Department of Child Services. And so I went through, again, explained the situation to Boston Public Schools, and then they were awaiting the conversation for the Department of Children and Child Services. And as I indicated, that meeting lasted all of 8 minutes. Where I went in, told them exactly what I did, then I was reinstated. But I was out nearly 3 weeks. And personally, I did not want to get the reputation of someone who would cause harm to a child. I've got 4 children who have gone through the Springfield Public Schools. I wouldn't want anybody doing that. And by no means would I want somebody to, that's never the intent. I never want anyone to put themselves in harm's way, especially a young person, that may cause them some either ill will, problems, or something even more drastic by going to something that you have no business being involved in. And again, being reinstated, of really coming back and acclimating myself back to school, it was tough. But one of the things that, and I don't know if folks here realize that, and I think I might have mentioned it at the last meeting, are the students who supported me while I was out, by walking out of school. And it hurt that I had to put these students in that position. And it's something, again, learning from your mistakes. And again, my intent was never to harm a child, but to get a child out of harm's way with individuals who might have caused him some problems down the road. And I just didn't want anyone feeling that that is my MO, that I'm here to harm young people. And so it really took a while coming back, but I tell you, the students, and I kind of get emotional over it, to see those students upon the return and feeling the love that they had. Yeah, it's just the connection that we had built, that they said, that's not how we feel, Mr. McCaskill, because we know what your intent for all of us. We know you have our best interests at heart at all times. And even the staff coming back. And it was just something in which was a hiccup. And it really just cemented about the impact that you can have on individuals. And so now you look at ways and you learn from those situations. You learn from those situations. And so it really showed, again, the body of work, the care, the benevolence, the concern, the empathy, the compassion that you show others will always come back to you. And so it's something that happened. I always say things happen for a reason. And it's a great day when we can stand tall and talk about it.
Kevin, thank you for that. Any other questions? Judy?
Thank you very much for your time today and this evening. I do have two questions. One's a follow-up and one's a little different. In terms of a follow-up, you explained this evening that one of your to-do lists would be to learn more about how to be a regional administrator, because that's just a new frontier for you. Part of Minuteman is that with our 9-member towns, some are rural, some are suburban, and some are so dense you could almost call them urban. We have quite a mix. So just to put you on the spot for a little bit, what would you anticipate might be some of the challenges for having a regional area which involves such diverse geography?
Again, as I indicated, Mr. Stewart, I see it as an opportunity. You know, obviously, when we look at the more condensed areas, you know, we'll probably understand, again, know a little bit more about those, because they probably are the equivalent of several neighborhoods in the city of Boston. But I look forward to really, and I was thinking about this, believe it or not, for the past week or so, because I had a feeling, how would you do it for some of the communities that I'm not so familiar with? And I go back to how did you, so Kevin, how did you introduce yourself to the schools and the communities, especially going down to Hartford? I'm not from Connecticut or Hartford, but going in and just talking to people. And I said, that's what I look forward to doing. I'm a big advocate of town meetings. Now, hopefully they don't get riotous and go, but really talk, what is really asking questions? What do you expect out of me? And when you ask that question, think about the response from the audience, because now it puts them to think a little bit. Well, it's because it gets past, you're the leader of this school community, but what do you expect out of me? And that's when we start the conversation. Because more times than not, I want the same thing. At the end of the day, at the end of every town hall meeting that I've had across 3 districts, I always end, we all want the same exact thing: success for our young people. And that looks different for a lot of different students, but we want success for them. If we can stay on that common North Star, we're always going to be in alignment. Now, we may disagree, but we'll always be in alignment. And that is one thing I'm looking forward when I visit Stowe, when I visit Arlington, or Bolton, or Concord, or Dover. I'll be at Mr. Spalding's home, of course, but at Acton and in Lexington, and as well as Needham. And I think the previous question at the first interview, working with those municipalities, superintendents, I look forward to those conversations. You know, hearing from the Judy Hackett from Lexington, who I worked on several boards. We're both on the ABTE, which is the Alliance for Vocational Technology. I look forward to those conversations. I'm not trying to steal. We want the same thing. And being very sincere and very authentic and very genuine with them. So those are pieces where, you know, going into, you know, most folks were unfamiliar turf. If you love kids and you love education, we're always on common ground. Always on common ground.
Thank you. Thank you. My last question. So school committees and administration, school administrations, we work best together as a partnership. Any school committee's responsibilities include the budget, policy, and supervising the superintendent. Can you suggest any specific ways in which this school committee could support the school's administration?
We had this conversation today about the duties of school committee. I think really a superintendent worth their weight in gold keeps the school committee apprised of what's going on in the school. Because obviously you have your duties, your three primary duties. But everything we do from a school perspective should be known. And so when I look at this is a partnership, if there are things that you don't like about what is going on, a conversation, and then let's move to actionable steps. When we're in disagreement, and I always ask, what do we do when we differ in opinion, concept, protocol, in beliefs? What do we do as a collective? And I have seen this in Springfield with 4 superintendents, Hartford with 4 superintendents in 5 years, Boston with 4, going on 5 superintendents in 7 years, is alignment with the school committee. And I see the school committee as a support mechanism. If you believe in what we're doing, I need to say that. And I need to feel comfortable talking to the school committee, and I need to be very receptive when there are issues coming up that you may have in questions. And instead of getting defensive, listen to what's being said. And then I always say coming to compromise, but coming to a consensus of how we move forward together. The last thing you want is division, and we've all seen it. We've seen it in other districts. When it goes awry, it just goes awry, and then no one wins, because that becomes the chatter in the teacher's lounge. That becomes the chatter in the town or the city. That becomes the focal point, as opposed to us collectively working towards bettering our school and our school districts. So I really believe that part, it is. We are a partnership. And it's as close to a marriage, and I believe it's as close to a marriage as it has to be. And I'm willing to work. And one of the things I have learned over the past 20 years is to become a better listener. And not automatically put up the guard, well, this is why we did. Listening first and understanding where it's coming from, and then acting accordingly.
Thank
Jeff,
you.
did I see your hand?
Kevin, you talked a lot about the advantages of career technical schools and how we do things. So my question for you is, which of the practices or attitudes of a career technical school should our traditional schools adopt without radically changing their mission? In other words, what things that we do here should the local, primarily academic high schools benefit most from adopting?
A project-based learning approach where a lot more hands-on and well, how do we do that in social studies and how do we do that in English language arts? Well, believe it or not, when you do public speaking, that's a hands-on event. Instead of them reading about Macbeth and everyone doing the old choral reading where you just read one after another for 90 minutes, how about acting Macbeth out? When I see students in math, when they're doing measurement, they're actually doing measurements where where they're actually estimating and they're actually doing it. They're not just looking at a book taking estimations. They're actually figuring out the dimensions of a room and how would we furnish this room if the dimensions are such and we have these pieces. Really making it more hands-on, where again, it's not just them sitting, where teachers are pitching and the students are constantly catching. So when you make it more interactive and then really add a true blended learning approach where technology is integrated into it, yeah, I think you'll see some changes. But in a lot of places, it's not that it's easy, but that's the way it's been done. And I think we really have to look at the type of students. And I know we've all heard, well, you know what, when I went to school, and I stopped saying that with my own children. I had to stop because as they started getting older, they just wouldn't. And I think students are different. We weren't exposed to 24-hour data coming our way nonstop, where the moment they pick up a phone, it's just between social media and all these other facets. Information's coming so fast. I think there's got to be a newer and more effective way than just the old way of just sitting in class for 90 minutes, walking to the next class. I just think there's a better use of time. I think also with the addition and more schools are going to the project-based learning, they're going to more of a pathway approach and seeing that if students see the benefit of a program or an approach where they're getting a credential. I mean, getting a grade is one thing, but getting an industry credential is another because, hey, that's tangible. That's real, that's accomplishment. And so those are some of the approaches I think right off the top of my head that need to change in public education. Now, they'll never change in private schools. That's just the way it is. That's just, they have a very traditional approach. But our public schools, if you added some of the components that we're doing from a vocational perspective, if you added those within the next month, you'd see a drastic change. I believe this, you'd see a drastic change in attendance and engagement immediately.
Kevin, you've arrived here from a variety of urban schools, that have needed probably fixing, some of which still need fixing. So I'm just curious, why Minuteman? Why are you interested in being the next superintendent director of Minuteman? What drove you to come out to this place in Lincoln and Lexington to be the superintendent here when your background was more urban?
It is something, and again, I've said it, I think a few times tonight and earlier, this approach is a game changer. And I see my role, again, added more responsibility. I've never shied away from hard work or work in general. But there is a passion, I see with the work that's being done, I'm moving further away I truly have a passion for. This approach has grown on me, and I believe it is the silver bullet of for student achievement, student performance, student engagement, and all the other things that come with it. Minuteman just provides that opportunity. It provides that opportunity. It's a successful school, but as you know, when we rest on success, we don't move. And the question becomes, how do we continue to grow and progress? I strongly feel what has been occurring here at Minuteman for the last several years, we're seeing growth, continuous growth. You're seeing a dedicated school committee, a school committee that wants continued success, that supports this approach to education. And the question becomes, why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? be a part of that growth. I mean, I'm as passionate about this approach as you will ever find anyone. And that's not ego, conceit. It's just a fact. You are providing the opportunity for me to seize. And this is my opportunity to go out and make all attempts to become the superintendent here at Minuteman.
Thank you. Do we have one more question?
My final question, I ask this very respectfully. You've had a wonderful career, 34 years, you've mentioned this evening. You have so much experience. And you've also mentioned that Dr. McQuillan's been here for 15 years. So this is probably more of a comment versus a question, because I wouldn't want to ask you on the spot like this. Personally, I cannot speak for the committee, looking for a candidate who is interested in more than one contract cycle. So, and I just would expect, because of your enthusiasm for what we do here at this school, that that would come to be.
Duly noted. Again, I am not looking to use Minuteman as a catapult to something else. I have never used any of my positions to go anywhere else. And I can share just example after example. After 22 years, I was in Springfield for 22 years. I was in Hartford and I was recruited by Hartford, and I said no twice. Something similar to Madison Park, I said no because I didn't think I'd go back to a school environment. But I'll share something. I think I might have shared it. The moment I told someone from Human Resources who was in Hartford's Human Relation, in the BPS Office of Human Capital, she came from Hartford, and she says, "Just do me this solid and do the interview." And so, walking into Madison Park, I was hooked. That old feeling about vocational education came back. And coming in early, and I purposely came in early just to get a sense of the school, but just seeing what I saw and seeing what the possibilities were, I had no intent on leaving. And I would have, correct me, and I'll be totally transparent and honest with you. I had no intentions of leaving Madison Park if the superintendent hadn't, moved me to central office. My intent was never to leave Madison Park. So I'm committed wherever I am. I remain committed. And so I thank you for that candidness. I truly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Why don't we end this evening with your closing remarks? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank everyone for your questions this evening. I hope I answered them to my best ability. And I really look forward to the next step. I really feel that I have the means to be someone that you will respect, someone that you could truly work with, someone that you will trust with the keys to this school district. And the questions that were asked, I feel so confident that the district is in great hands. And I don't say that tongue in cheek, and I don't say it just for the sake of saying it. I think the district is in great hands with you folks here. And you deserve a superintendent that will be so committed to the advancement of this school district, to the advancement of programming, to the advancement of opportunities for young people and the staff. And if it all falls in place, I hope that I am that individual to work with you, to work with staff, and to work with the respective communities. That Minuteman will be the career vocational technical education school, not just of this region, but one of national recognition. So I thank you for this opportunity to address you at this time. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I will now turn this meeting over to our chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kevin. Really appreciate you answering all of our questions over the last 2 hours. Just to remind people, we will reconvene here, same time, a week from today. I was going to say September. We're not in September. January 19th. It's 7 o'clock. And I think right now, all I need is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.